want to go back. He wants to go back. I want to go back to the farm. Go back far away from home, with a milk pail on my arm. I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. down on the farm.
I'm Scott Bain. They call me the old farmer. I knew when I got the Harbor Freight Hercules 12-inch miter saw that I needed to build a workstation for it. It's quite a bit bigger than the 10-inch Chicago electric miter saw that I've had for well over 30 years. I've used the Hercules Miter Saw for some time now and still feel it's a better built than what DeWalt offers, and at half the price. Even Mrs. Old Farmer likes using the saw. That alone is worth getting it. I must admit my opinion has changed. I like it better than I thought I would, to the point that I swapped out the general blade on the table saw to a ripping blade. I'll do most of my cross-cutting using the Hercules. The wheels are swivel on one end and lockable. Although I doubt the workstation will move without a deliberate effort, I may change out the wheels because they like to skid on the cement. To change out the wheels, I will lift one end at a time like I would a zero-turn lawnmower, with jack stands in place for safety. I watched a good many YouTube channels to see what others did when they built a workstation. The most important point I got was that it's bi-level, with the miter saw sitting a few inches below the level of the table, so that wood would slide from the table to the miter saw without causing a dip or an angle that would distort the cut the blade would make. I took the measurements of the miter saw and created a rough sketch from the dimensions. I simplified things by making the length 10 feet and the width came in at 32 inches and 5/8. This means there will be a little overhang of the miter saw on the back side when the saw is pushed all the way back on the slides. I didn't want any overhang on the front of the saw. The height of the workstation is 33 inches. I made sure this was a comfortable height for both Mrs. Old Farmer and myself. She's uncomfortable using the table saw and the old miter saw. The Hercules saw she feels she can use comfortably. I think she feels she has more control while using it. The frame was made using 2x6x10 boards. I cut them to the exact length of 10 feet. The main vertical posts were made from 4x4s. The recessed platform for the saw was made from 2x4s. Since I measured exactly to the height of the top frame, I was 1.5 inches too low because I forgot about the double layer of 3/4 inch birch finished plywood for the tabletop. I corrected this error by using 2 pieces of 2x8 that sat on top of the 2x4s. The plywood was made in America, so I didn't have to adjust from imperial to metric for my measurements. Even though I used self-tapping 3.5 inch screws with a Torx head, where it would split the wood, I drilled holes using an old Sunbeam non-reversible drill. This old Sunbeam had 4 times the torque that battery-powered drills or impact drills offered. The first time I used it, it pulled itself out of my hand. I plan on using a socket switch to turn on and off automatically the dust collection when the miter saw is used. I'll leave links to the video explaining how the switch works. I want to be able to have electricity to the workstation all the time so that I can charge batteries and use the miter saw without having to plug everything in. I got the wood from the local lumber yard, and after repeated purchases from them, I came to the conclusion they were more expensive and carried a smaller selection of stock and a poorer quality than the big box stores. The last straw for me was I needed a specific length of plywood for a honeydew job that was longer than normal. Mrs. Old Farmer called to check if they had any. They said they had. We went in and placed an order to be loaded into the old farm truck. And when we got back to the yard, we found out they never carried it. The order I placed was changed to what they wanted to sell me, not what I had ordered. Another time we wanted to replace our patio doors. The doors could not take another winter. To replace with the same brand for a special order, no cost to them, the lumber yard expect we would pay them a handling fee of $2,000 for $2,000 worth of doors, making the cost $4,000. It's hard to make me put an anathema against a business, but they did everything they could, and they finally made it. I'll drive 25 miles to another lumber yard before I set my feet inside their store. All this after understanding that these are hard times for lumber yards, and they needed a break because of the shutdown of the economy. Wood from them is twice the price of the big box stores and 1/4 the quality. I follow the wholesale prices of wood, and all these folks lacked was a ski mask and a gun to make it a true hold-up. I support our local businesses with one very important caveat. They have to support me. I'll pay an honest higher price at the local hardware store to support them. If they don't have it, then I go to the big box store. In return, they give me fair prices and help me figure out the best way of doing something if I need help. Usually it's with converting what I know to the new way of doing things. A good example is PEX plumbing from the old copper-sweated pipes. I had to order in the screws for this project online because I will no longer use flat heads or Phillip head screws. I now only use Torx and Robertson screws. I did tell the local hardware store after trying to find these heads on the screws they sold. These are good people. Later on I'll try again to see if they have these style heads on boxes of screws. As for the wood from the lumber yard, it was extremely warped, and I let things age in the garage for more than a couple of weeks so that the moisture content equalized. Fortunately, the only thing that needed to be exact is the bi-level top, and after realizing my mistake, it was a quick solution that actually allowed me to clean up the man glitter under the saw. I added a shelf on both ends while leaving the part under the miter saw open. I still have not figured out how to bring the suction up through the workstation. The air input on the Harbor Freight dust collector is 4 inches. I may choke this down to a smaller size. Maybe use a modified funnel to suck the sawdust from the miter saw. I plan to add wrapping around the outside so that it will be enclosed. That's why I didn't worry about the glue drool. I had come out and scraped the glue off the sides about an hour after attaching the second sheet of plywood. I thought it was done drooling. Obviously it wasn't. I knew I would have a bunch of screw holes, and that was one of the reasons I'm planning the wrap. The other reason is to keep dust off of the things on the shelves. On one side I'm planning to keep short pieces of wood. I don't know yet what I will store on the other side. On top and along the back, I'm thinking of installing some shelving. One idea is to move all the chargers over and mount them solid. Most of the Miter workstations on YouTube either had shelving or cupboards along the back. I think adding shelving will be the best solution for the shop. If need be, I can add a back wall from the top of the workstation to the bottom of the shelving and hang appropriate tools for easy access. The way I will position the workstation is across from the Harbor Freight Windsor workbench and the credenza that holds the grinder and the scroll saw. It will make it so that I have a galley walkway. I have the Miter workstation positioned so that all I have to do is pull it to the left to use. I'm rethinking this and may swap it around so that the front side of the workstation faces the galley walkway. This way I do not have to move it to use. There are two ways to mount the Hercules Miter Saw to a work surface. There are screw holes to screw the miter saw to a work surface. There are also six-sided holes so that a nut can be locked into place using a bolt. In my case, I screw the saw down and then I used threaded rod with a double nut on the bottom side along with some Loctite. The saw will not move. I held the top sheets in place with 4 18-gauge brads, one on each corner, and then clamps with improvised cauls. After drying, the second sheet was solidly attached. The dust collection will sit in the center with a filter on the back side of the workstation to help reduce particulates. And I will also have room for a bin to hold the smallest pieces of wood. Along the front, I will have doors. I will see what kind of materials are available later on. I will probably make the doors myself. Even though the workstation is taking up a lot of room in the garage, it can store a good amount of items and I think can help with organizing the work area. I need more storage to hold things when not in use. I've got the smaller things organized. Now I have to figure a way to store some of the medium-sized items like power tools so that things will not look or feel cluttered. Each day I take a small step and eventually everything will fall into place with storage for everything. As for the workstation, both Mrs. Old Farmer and yours truly like the way it adds stability to the process of cross-cutting. Well, this is the Old Farmer, Scott Boehm. Be well.